Alrighty. Good afternoon, everyone. I don't know who will be joining, who will be watching later. We'll see. But what we're setting out to do here is we're going to just mess around with AL code and development in Dynamics 365 Business Central. I've been working with Business Central and before that NAV for quite a long time, and I've had a few people ask me about how to get started as a developer. And if you're not working for a development partner, that is a really tricky thing to get your head around. So I thought it might be a good idea to give a sense of what it's like to develop a solution from beginning to end. We're going to have a little fun with it though. Typically, it's accounting, it's inventory, it's warehousing. We have all these different parts of the system that they're extremely helpful for business, but they're not playful. So we're going to take a slightly different approach in that we are going to gamify our solution a little bit. We are going to set out to make what is called an incremental game. There are lots of games out there in the world like it. So, for example, to look at Space Company as an example, incremental games tend to be little web games that you unlock different resources and things accumulate over time, and the game slowly unfolds to become more complex. Well, that's a really good example for us to use with Business Central, since it can be a complex system, but we want to go ahead and start small. So we're going to take the approach to build a game engine that you all are welcome to join in as players as we get it to playable. And we're going to take the approach that you are representing companies representing companies that are attempting to accumulate the most wealth. And this is going to be accomplished via the use of bots. And bots are going to be our primary driver of how the system gets used. Bots will drive how orders will get placed, how demand gets fulfilled, how wealth is accumulated. And just to make it a little more interesting and a little more community driven, we'll go ahead and break this idea up into seasons and have some competition between the different companies. So once we get this built, enough to be in its early alpha status, then we'll go ahead and open that up for people to join in and try playing that against each other. So let's talk about what are we actually trying to make here. And this is an example of a very limited spec. We're not breaking down all the different things that we're going to define on parts of the system, fields and functions and how that all work, but more kind of a scope of what are we trying to accomplish. So I mentioned that we are going to use something that doesn't exist in Business Central today, a concept called bots. And bots are going to do the jobs of virtual staff. They will create sales orders through order processing. They will buy supplies through purchasers. We will also play around with the logistics parts of the Business Central system, which come in a few different varieties depending on how you configure your business environment. We will primarily focus on basic and advanced logistics, but there's also some ability to create items and manage the creation of items in Business Central, so we'll also play with that. We'll also make use of the marketing system, and we're going to create a whole new engine called Research that is going to be all about improving things. So let's look through what are we going to actually do. Those bots are going to buy and sell items. So what are those items? We're going to have fictional items that have some supply and demand logic that will drive prices going up and down. And we'll talk about how they're stored in the location engine. Sales orders are going to be created by bots. Each of the bots for sales orders will represent a customer. So they're going to play a virtual representative of a customer organization. As we make upgrades to the bots through research, then they'll create orders for larger amounts of items, larger quantities of different types of items, maybe more frequent. And the same will follow over on the purchase side. We will have some demand that is being created by all of these sales operations, so we need to keep up our supply as well. While the bots might be virtual staff, those products are going to need to be stored somewhere. So we're going to have locations that will be unlockable by players as they slowly develop their organizations, and there'll be different types. We're going to keep it nice and simple and do either basic or advanced. Basic logistics will represent locations that maybe only has a fixed set of bins, but there's a limited number of bots that will be able to do operations within that location. And that'll directly drive how quickly we can fulfill orders. Advanced locations will support more bots, but they will utilize some of the warehousing elements of the system, and they'll be able to have higher throughput than the basic logistic locations. Later, we'll have some high-value items that are either assembled, kind of think of kit-type items, things that maybe you buy whole and then box up and send out, but they're not manufactured. They're nothing complex. And we might go ahead and then have even higher value items that are going to be manufactured later. Familiar to many folks who play different sorts of online games, we'll go ahead and have a tech tree style research where we can allocate bots to performing research operations to improve the other bots, to unlock more items, to decrease power consumption, more on that in a moment, and possibly to work faster. And last but not least, we'll have some marketing bots that'll generate some campaigns to increase the demands for items, because why not? Let's do some campaign pricing. Additionally, all bots obviously are going to require some power. This is going to be the primary cost of the game. Beyond purchasing of goods, all the bots that we have are going to create a power bill for us, and that'll be charged per game day. So we need to make sure we can go ahead and keep ahead of our power costs. So we have to balance our sales flow against all of our costing. And then we're going to need to have some virtual ticking over of time in a different way. If we did this slowly over the course of a real day, that would be awfully slow. So what we're going to do is we're going to run a quote-unquote season for 2 months, and at the end of each season, we'll go ahead and declare the winners of that season and be able to review that later in a records sort of way. We'll also have all the bots doing operations per game day, and that'll go ahead and take over about every 15 minutes. For those of you who are familiar with Business Central, we're going to do some job queue stuff related to that. That'll help us make this work. The key measure of a success of a company is the overall wealth of its company. After all, this is a corporate and capitalist game here. So players are going to start with a pool of cash, and as they transact, the balance will go up and down. If you acquire new bots, new locations, that reduces your available cash, but still increases your overall wealth. That'll be nice and easy for us to handle with the general ledger, so that's fine. And inventory accounts and things like that will also affect the overall wealth. So even if you're in the middle of fulfilling a very large order, that still counts towards your wealth. And we'll go ahead and use the chart of accounts to accomplish that. And later on, when we're doing some of the setup of this, we'll see it's going to be very easy for us using the chart of accounts to calculate the overall wealth of each company. And then over time, we'll go ahead and store some of those wealth totals as part of a running tally of where we're at with the overall competition for the season. So that's the general idea of what we're going to make. So what do we need to break that down? We are going to have to invent a new part of the Business Central system, these bots. They're effectively going to be job queue driven things. Job queue is the old school name. Technically these days it's task scheduler, but it's mixed language. In the interface you'll still find under job queue. Sometimes in the back end you'll see a task scheduler. Basically it's going to be our engine by which we can run code on a regular basis, in our case every 15 minutes or so. We'll need to do some setup and configuration work around locations, including adding some new attributes. We're going to need to create items, which will some of these areas where it'll be generating items, customers, vendors. I'm going to go ahead and do some of those off camera because it's pretty boring to watch someone generate customer and vendors over and over again. And we're also going to need to define a common chart of accounts that everyone will use so we can effectively measure everyone against each other. We're going to create a whole new ecosystem for our tech tree and how that research should be handled. Once we have in mind all those different pieces, we're going to simplify the management of this by having a company that we'll flag as a master company that defines the setup of this for all of the companies across the organization. This way, a system administrator of this game could go ahead and manage this more easily. Each player in our community game of this will be its own company for ease of permissions. So we're going to be doing a few pieces of cross-company validation. And there'll probably be some tables here and there that will do cross-company data as well. For those of you new to Business Central, all of the data in the database is stored per company unless explicitly told to otherwise. So effectively, you can have hundreds of different legal entities in the same database if you wanted to. Okay, let's see. We're also going to need to have a dashboard for that system manager so we can easily create new players. We're going to create those with a username, password, email. We need to see an overview of the player list, see if they're currently active, what their wealth is, what their standing is, and we want to be able to manage seasons, and be able to mark that a season has ended, review some of the past data. For players, we're going to need to do some UI design. We're going to need a nice and easy role center. We're going to make sure it's mobile friendly so that folks can play in the mobile app because, hey, why not phone game? We should be able to quickly and easily see what our current standing is in the season, an overview of the counts of bots that we have, how many locations we've purchased, what our current wealth change has been, and based on our current past 7 days, what we're looking at for a projection over the next 7. Depending on where we go with this series, we may tap into some of the Azure AI on the prediction stuff. We may not. The players should have a nice and easy bot management screen to see all the bots that they currently have active, be able to do operations around those bots, such as upgrade, purchase, sell. We should be able to do the same for locations, see all of them, upgrade them, purchase them, sell them, maybe review all of the inventory in those locations. And then we should, of course, be able to see the chart of accounts. We should be able to review our research, queue up some of the additional research for any bots that are doing that job to review all those, and then be able to look through all of the standard areas of the system, customers, vendors, items, those sort of things. As an interesting aside, one of the approaches that I'm going to take with this is we're going to be creating a new security role that when we create players, players will have the ability to see all of these pieces of information. You'll be able to see all of the posted sales orders. You'll be able to see all the open purchase orders, all of the warehouse documents that these bots are creating. But the only areas that players will be able to make changes through are a very small number of places. Some of these bot menu options and things like that. So we're going to be doing an interesting amount of permission setting and restricting access to things. And last but not least, because I think it is of value to us to do this, is that we can provide some options around email management. Since this is something that will be always ticking along every 15 minutes or so, something else new is happening, it's beneficial to give the player some option over that 2-month season to sign up for some alerts. So maybe they get a daily summary, real world day rather than game day. If there is low cash on hand, maybe their bots are drawing too much power, but there's not enough sales to cover that. Set some alerts up around that. And then also if they want to receive an email with kind of the overall standings of how everyone did at the end of that little season. So that's the rough rundown of what we're going to be building an engine to support. I will, at the end of the development live stream, once we've really run everyone through their paces and test all of the different items and locations, I will go ahead and create a config package for the master company. So that way people could potentially choose to run this in their own environments if they wanted to have a private competition in-house with their own VC system. It'd be a little strange use of it, but hey, yeah, up to you. So we've got a lot of different parts that we're going to need to make. And just for some of the administrative side of things, this all is going to be checked into GitHub in a public repo for this. I'll link that in the description for this video up on YouTube. You'll find it on my Twitter here and there. It's not particularly hard to find. It'll be linked just about everywhere. So you can go ahead and grab snapshots as we move along through the development of this. And there will be links to the sign up on this in the GitHub repo, which is just nice and easy. We have that located here at github.com/JeremyVisca/Biggening. And there is a little form here that you can go ahead and fill out if you would like to become one of the alpha players to test this out. It'll be a little bit before we're in a playable state, but my goal is to try to have that done within about a week or so. And for the moment, at least while I'm on vacation, because I'm a nut and doing this while on vacation, we're going to aim for live streaming at 3 p.m. each day. Each weekday, I should say. And I do, of course, make those all available after the fact, which may be where you're watching that now. So, with that all said, I guess we'll jump in. There's lots of things that I'm going to be stumbling around through. There are probably a handful of people in the world at this point who could claim to be an expert in Business Central. I'm not there yet, but we'll get there together. So some things that we're going to do in this are going to be new to me too, but that's fine. Very easy, nice and straightforward. I've already created our basic extension. And this contains all of the usual pieces. For those of you who haven't gotten this far in creating your own Business Central extensions, this far there are lots of guides how to set up GitHub repos and how to create a new project. So I'll leave you to go find some of those, I'm afraid. Feel free to tweet at me if you need a link to any of them. So, we've got ourselves a development environment, and I've got myself a Cronus set up for now. We're going to go ahead and create some master companies. This little regional formatting bug is charming. I'm in Sweden, and Cronus USA is formatting this $12,000 order as 12,000 crowns, which is a little different. Good try. But we'll go ahead and develop in this company for now, and we'll see how things go. Okay, for now, we're going to focus on getting some of the master company logic in place. That feels like a good place to start, so that way after today's stream I can go ahead and start creating some of those customers, vendors, and items. A little bit boring, but we'll do that. So let's go ahead and we're going to create a new folder. You don't have to do folder structures within your extensions, but it's of benefit. I've gone ahead and used the source folder, and we're going to create a new AL file. I am running lots and lots of extensions, so if you have just set up your Visual Studio Code environment, you will not have many of these AL specific things. And I'm still getting used to some of them myself. There is a wonderful extension out there that Waldo has put together that is the AL extension pack that installs all these in one pass for you. And some of these I'm not familiar with, so we'll be learning together. But in my case, I'll go ahead and in our new master company, our main thing first is that we are going to need to be able to say, what is a master company? So I'll go ahead and create my first table. Thank you. Which is going to be let's go with a prefix of Biggening Corporation Streaming, BCS. Sounds good. We'll try to be consistent about our naming. This is not something I plan to publish to AppSource, but it's always a good idea to comply with some of the AppSource standards, such as prefixes or suffixes. We may go ahead and turn on some of the code cop rules if they're not already on in this environment, and I'll show you some of the settings around that a little later. But let's go ahead and add to the company information table. Pardon the screen info spam. For the shortcut keys, I find it probably useful for you to know what am I typing. So we'll go ahead and create a new field. I'm not sure which extension is giving me, it's this AL toolbox. I should be getting autocomplete here with a field number, but the IntelliSense on that as I'm typing is not auto-completing that, which is a little frustrating. And there we go. So we'll create a ability to flag a company as master company. One thing that we could do differently with this is that we could have a company, we could go ahead and extend the companies table, which is a system table. I'd rather not. We could have a table that shares its data among the different companies, and we specify by name which company is the master company. I'd rather not. I think in this case this is a safe enough implementation to go. You'll notice I just named this something.al. I only named it, it doesn't matter what before the .al. I have my Waldo's extension, the Cloud Ready software extension, set up to rename this file as soon as I hit save. So it sees that this is a table extension called BCS company information. When I hit save, we should have seen it get renamed. So, super quick little thing here. We're going to go to our CRS AL extension, and I thought we had this set. We apparently do not. Good stuff. I wanted to hit some trip up somewhere in things, so glad we did. I very much, again, pulling heavily from Waldo, and pardon I'm off screen bringing up a blog post that has nice, easy new rules about this. Waldo had created a blog post that he shared his community best practice on the naming pattern. So we're going to go ahead and copy all that out. His blog on this is not difficult to find. There we go. And now when we name things, it will name things in a more logical sort of way. So there we are. And if we go ahead and save this file now, there we go. We can see it gets renamed to the correct form, BCS company information, and it's a table extension file. That's taken some getting used to. The community standard was a little different for a while. It had object numbers in it. Sometimes we said which object we're extending, and that got incorporated into the name. So you'll see I'm probably going to fall back on those habits here and there, but thankfully our extensions will do most of the work for us. So we'll go ahead and same thing. We're going to BCS we're going to extend the company information, and we'll add the field, which is master company, and curious. See, still already not doing things the smart way. We are extending the company information, we're extending layout, and you guys who are used to doing this the long way are already probably yelling at me for trying to put a field directly in layout. That would make sense in a page, but a page extension, we need to decide what we're doing. We'll go ahead and add that last to the general section. Now we'll do a field that is master company. There we go. Okay. Much better. And we don't need actions, so we'll clear that out. And there we go. Okay, so nothing exciting so far, but now let's take advantage of some events. We are going to make a new code unit that is going to subscribe to a whole host of events. And we'll go ahead and call this master company. That's just fine. Alrighty. So I know, for example, and just to lay this out a little bit, that we are going to watch for any time a customer insert or modify, or even delete, really, because we'll be doing all those operations in the master company where we're creating all of these. We'll go ahead and do the same for vendor. We're going to use the same for items. And now, based on our original specification here, we are also going to have bots, but that's new. We are going to have items that are going to get unlocked, but those once unlocked, then it's about quantities of them. The setup of them will not change very much. Locations, they're going to come in different types, but players could potentially buy lots of different locations. So we're going to leave that alone. We also need our chart of accounts. So let's go ahead and we'll do that. GL accounts. Great. A little later on, I will probably come back off camera and clean up some things around, for example, posting groups. Very important to have those all set up correctly, but not exciting to sit and watch someone do that. So VAT and tax groups are included in that. Same for inventory, customer, and vendor groups. All of these different posting setups, we'll go ahead and hook onto those and copy those over as well. We don't need to worry about that too much at this point. Okay, so that kind of gives us our rough in-file target of some of the things that we're going to need to make. And some of these will have some related piece of information. For example, item. Anytime you do anything with items, you are also doing things with item unit of measure. So we'll make sure we note that. Okay, this gives us kind of our shopping list of all the different things we're going to need to subscribe to in here, which is a lot. So let's grab an event subscriber, and still getting used to some of the keyboard shortcuts, so I just goofed that up. Excellent. Let's see which table we're going to do on. I believe we have to say database customer. Yep. There we go. Okay. And we'll do an on after insert, which doesn't have an element. We'll go ahead and on missing license or permission, we will not skip those things. And BCS master customer inserted. And this is after it has happened, so we'll go ahead and we will do our control space IntelliSense to get all of our parameters. And even if I don't use run trigger, I always do a check. Just a really good design pattern. If not, run trigger, then thank you. Just to be safe. What am I missing? Yeah. It can't. It doesn't have a return value, so exit cannot be called with a value. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Which is why I didn't. Goofball. I believe that's just genius code detection not seeing that. Yeah, okay. It's now picky and wants us to not include the parentheses. Good stuff. All right. It's also incorrectly seeing that this is an unused variable. That is wrong. I am using it right here. So that's fun. Okay. Slowly learning which extensions have their brain put together. I appreciate that it's offering the same error message significantly to me. Cool stuff. All right. Well, anyways, so here's what we're going to do. Anytime a customer is inserted in the database, we need to, if it's the master company, which is the only place anyone should be inserting this, then we need to copy that customer record to all of the other companies in the system. So we're going to need a quick check function that we're going to use lots and lots of times all over the place. So let's come on down to the end here. We'll create a local procedure is master company. This is going to return a boolean, and we will need the company information. As a variable, we're going to need the company information table. So when this code unit is triggered, the current company we're in, we're going to go get the company information record if there is one. And if that checkbox that we just made over in the other file, if that checkbox is checked, then it is a master company. In all other cases, nope, it is not a master company. So if company information.get because it might not be set up yet for some reason. Then, and I appreciate IntelliSense helping my typing a great deal. Company information, master company. And because the only other possible is an else, we'll say exit false. Couple odds and ends. I have a really hard time transitioning to the case, lowercase style of the AL code still here and there, so you'll just see me goof up on that. And we'll occasionally see still some semicolon missing, and on the bright side, we get at least syntax errors on this. I've used Visual Studio Code a lot, and for many of the other languages that are available for Visual Studio Code, when these rules happen, oftentimes those other languages do offer these little quick fixes. This is normally a clickable link, and that it would actually go ahead and say, look, if you know that it expected a semicolon before this, why can't I click a button and you put it there? So I'm hoping that that's something that comes to our environment. That'll be pretty cool. I think that'll help us a lot. So if this is not a master company, then we'll also exit. And no parens because we're not returning a value apparently. I'm still getting used to when do we include that these days. I thought we always did now, but nope. Okay, so on the event that anywhere in our system a customer is inserted after that happens, if it's not a master company, then exit. If it is a master company, however, which is now where we're getting into, we are going to go through all of the companies. So company, record, company. This is the Business Central Company table, which isn't the same as company information. The company table is a system table, and when we go to our list of companies in the database, that's where it is pulling this from. Company information is for lots of the business legal operation info, and we're going to be cycling through customers based on those Business Central level, not the legal entity. They are usually one-to-one, but it is possible to have a company without having a company information, which is why we did an if get earlier. So we're also going to need a variable for our customer table. Okay, so now what we are going to do here in a moment, and it's often good to lay out what you're going to do in comments. You can choose whether to remove them or leave them after. That's up to you, but it's sometimes pretty helpful as a working list to go, what was the intent of this section of code? We are going to, for each company in the database, if it is not the current company, insert a copy. The only way we could have gotten to this piece of code here is if we are in the master company, which we will go back and tidy things up and make it so that only one company in the database can be set as the master company. We haven't done that yet though. But theoretically, if we are here, then we will go ahead and loop through. We're not modifying the table, so we'll do a find set false. There's probably a more efficient way to do that keystroke-wise. There's lots of shortcuts now, so I probably could be using some IntelliSense wizardry to go streamline through there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each company in the database, and if the company name does not equal company name, then we'll go ahead and customer dot change company. Now, something that a lot of early developers will do is that when they realize that you can change company in code, is they will go ahead and go, great, fantastic, I can just change companies and now I can insert records into that other company and all is well. This is a dangerous sort of strategy. It is something that we are going to go ahead and do because this is not an accounting solution that we're providing to a customer with lots and lots of validation logic. We can be pretty safe here in this case to do this, but all of the validation logic around the customer is still going to be run in the company that we are presently in. So what I mean by that is when we do customer, for example, let's say validate the name, and we force it to be something co. This validate, if it calls any other records, like a contact record, it's not going to be in the right company. So for the most part, change company should be something that you approach with a lot of caution and a lot of fear and respect. So definitely be careful with that. It is easy to think that you'll be just fine. Don't do that. Because of the interconnectedness of tables, I've also once or twice in my career seen someone do something crazy, such as mark the customer table as modified to be intercompany, because they're going, oh, we all sell to the same customer list. I'll go ahead and make the customer table intercompany. Same sort of issue. You can run into some really crazy validation linkages there. It is not something you should never modify system tables to be intercompany or not from what it currently is. In our case, however, we're going to deal with this nice and simple. We don't have any intention at this time of having different customer lists per different company, and so we should be okay. We might later, when we get into the marketing aspect of things, where we're doing some of the campaign bots for that, we might get into some interesting places where we need the customer price groups and customer discount groups to be set up correctly, but that's fine. So now what we are going to do is, with all of those warnings and caveats, we are going to go ahead and say customer init. I don't think we have to do that in this case, but we're going to. We'll go ahead and say customer equals rec. The customer that has been inserted in our current company, we'll go ahead and insert that into the other company. Okay, so there we go. Now, if I were to go ahead and publish this, we're going to go ahead and, we'll test it out. Let's do it. So, I've got this hooked up to our local test environment here. And, since I told it to run debug, it'll always pop open a new tab so that it's got its new debugging context. So if anything does go wrong, we will jump right back to the Visual Studio environment, because here we're debugging. We could go ahead and pause it in any of the flow of things. I've created in my environment here a new company besides Kernus called BC Metadata. This one's going to be where we will set up all of the core information for our Biggening corporation data. So in our master data here, we can see that everything is pretty empty. But that's interesting. We specifically told it that we were adding to the general a thing called master company. So did I not publish? Well, that's curious, isn't it? Let's just, for sanity's sake, go ahead, log out. Password manager offering to be helpful. So there's an example of the sort of thing that does sometimes drive me a little bonkers. We seem like we've got everything correct, and we seem like everything is fine, but yet, no. Okay. Well, let's troubleshoot. Well, you'll do that a lot too. Okay, so yep, here's our Biggening incorporation engine, stonks, and let's see. So it did say that it's going ahead and publishing this. It's targeting my correct server instance using the password and authentication. What's interesting is that even though it said it's doing all of those things, it didn't actually do a publish command that I can tell. So let's try to troubleshoot that for a sec here. If we go into our launch JSON, one of the little things that drives me nuts is that I've got it set to false, but run still launches it anyways. Brilliant. Okay, well, let's do this. Control-Shift-P to open up our commands. I will say publish without debugging this time. Let's see if that gives us at least a different result. There we go. Okay, so now on top of our third line, we have this little sending request. And I've got this configured to use the default, which is that it does a schema update mode of synchronize in this little URL here. This is fine for what we're doing here. For the most part, we're not going to be deleting any data out of the fields that we're creating as we're moving along. If we were being a good egg and doing a lot of test-driven development, we would probably go ahead and set the schema update mode on this to clear the data. So that way it is generating a nice and new fresh data set every time, and our test cases, which would be a separate extension, our test cases would be doing the generating and validating and cross-checking the data. My apologies to all of you out there that absolutely love test-driven development. I am going to go just the old school way of seat of the pants development instead. Okay, and there we go. That's the error I was looking for on There. Now this is a master company. Great. Okay, so with that in place and with that checked, if we come on over to our customers, we should see nice and easy, everything's empty. If you've never seen an empty company before, they go ahead and offer up some tools these days to encourage you to migrate your data. It's a good idea. In the cloud environment, there's a lot more opportunity for customers to self-set up. So we're going to go ahead and we'll just call this ztest01 or something silly like that. So it's really obvious that this is our test customer. And there we go. So here's a fun one. We got an error when we went to insert this record. Yep, we're going to discard that. So what could have possibly gone wrong? Well, it had to have been our event, right? So let's go ahead and debug that. Some of you probably have already spotted the issue, and that was on purpose. We always have to do so much troubleshooting as we develop, so it's a good idea to know how to find your problem. So, bam, yes. We get a couple of errors in our Kronos environment. I don't particularly care what the fix on this is, but thank you for offering to let me troubleshoot the... Yeah, that's gonna... Brilliant. Why are we paused still? I opted not to debug that. Brilliant. Thank you, Customer Statistic Fact Box. I wanted to troubleshoot you. I did not want to troubleshoot it. You absolutely don't have to create a new debugging session every time. It is entirely possible to create a launch config so that you can attach to running ones. I am just trying to muddle through. I wonder what we're tripping on here. It's telling me that we're pausing on a breakpoint, but I have no need to pause on this particular breakpoint. So I appreciate it trying. What a curious thing. Has to do something with a get last payment date, but we're creating a new customer, so there's nothing to get there. Interesting. I haven't spent much time looking at the new background task side of things, but apparently some error handling quietly happens behind the scenes as part of background tasks for new customers. But what we really wanted to see is the error that results here. So what's going on? How do we troubleshoot this? Okay. Well, we've hit a debug point where it would throw an error if we let it to keep just running. So what's going on? First of all, what we've got going on in our debug panel, if you haven't seen it, is we've got our variables. If we're watching for things, it's over here. And here's the whole call stack. Now, because this is triggering on the event of our customer on after insert, there is no stack before this. That's where the stack ends, effectively. But we can go ahead and look to see what's actually happening. We're trying to insert a record called ztest01, go figure, and it's cycling through the companies. It is currently on company Kronos USA, and it is doing a change company. Aha! Yeah, the nice and easy issue here. Company customer.change company. Yep, those of you who spotted it already, you are absolutely correct. This takes a parameter. It does not need to, but it makes absolutely no sense that we're calling this without a parameter to say which company are we changing to. So what's happening here is that it is perfectly valid. It checks out against all the rules. There's no compile errors, but it will never ever work. And this happens a lot in what we do, in that there are things that we have to, as developers, learn what are some of the common things that, by all accounts, and all the tools in the world and all the intelligence in the world, aren't going to help us catch. And we have to make sure we're thinking things through. So here, this change company, it optionally takes a company name. Well, yeah, optionally, but I mean, I think if we don't pass it a parameter, it changes it back to the current company, but that's not clarified. So I presume the correct legal use case of the parameterless call to this function would be if we wanted to, after we run this code, switch back to the current company. But we need to change company to the company.name. So now this will actually correctly change company over to not the current company, which is what this was doing, but to Kronos to go ahead and insert this. Now, we're doing this insert, and we're going to go ahead and try to bring this over there, but those of you who know all the, but it shouldn't exist, yeah, yep, it's always safety check. So let's go ahead and in this process of things, we will say if customer.get, which I wish it auto-completed to the simple, straightforward version first, but it doesn't. If customer.get our rec.number, if that customer already exists, then let's throw an error, actually. Let's go ahead and blow up and say that something went terribly wrong. Because at this point in the game, our master data should be driving all of the subsidiary company data. So we want to get an error message. For those of you who are used to the old school way of things, this is an interesting thing to get used to, is that we need to define all our variables in here, including our multi-language stuff. So once upon a time, we might have just done a global global text constant called like text 001, or maybe even as fancy as error 001. Super clear on what exactly that was. So we're going to use the more modern nomenclature, and we're going to say something like master, actually not master, customer already exist, insert error. And this is going to be a new label. And we will say customer %1 already exists in company %2. For those of you who are rookie developers, when we call the error message or the message command, which would be like that, it automatically does text substitution for these % variables to a list of variables that we supply after that. So down here in our error message, where we can say customer already exists, insert error, we know that we've got %1 and %2 in here. So we can say rec.number and company.name. And by doing so, we give the error message the information to say which customer number and in which company does that name already exist. We might find some scenarios later on where we don't need it to error. We just need to gracefully skip this chunk of code where we don't want to insert. And then it would just be as straightforward as if not, then begin, do these two things. And so nice and easy. There are some additional options around labels. For example, I believe it's in here. Yep, comment. We could go ahead and give the comment that this error shows when a master customer is inserted but exists in other companies. This comment here will show up in translation files. So if we were making this solution multi-language compatible, which we will probably do, I would like to get a little further into functionally working before we add that in, just to show kind of the amount of effort it is if you don't do that right from the get-go. I think there's some value to that. And I believe, yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was just double checking. I was hoping that we had a nice update to the extension where maybe when we mouse over the label that we could see this comment in the tooltip. That would be fantastic. I might throw that up on the idea site later because, I mean, how handy would that be? Oh well. Once upon a time, too, in the classic environment, when you mouse over this, you would see the text that is the label, so that would also be an improvement. Anyways, all right. I'm not a big fan of the fact that it's telling me I have 1,098 errors. in this particular file, which is impressive given my 50 lines, half of which are comments or white space. So this is a little bit bananas. I haven't used the nav skills clean code. It seems like a really good idea, but I mean, really, what could possibly be the reason to give this many errors to anyone ever? I might just shut that extension off shortly because that's going to drive me nuts. I actually do use the problem list usually to keep our problem count nice and low as we're going. So how we do this? Nav skills is in here. I'm not sure what's going on. I will ask Mark a little bit about it. There's probably a setting I'm missing or something along those lines. There aren't a lot of settings, but okay. I'm going to temporarily disable this for this workspace. There we go. So hopefully that'll be something that we can get sorted out, because there are otherwise no actual problems. There is one. I forgot the comment. Equals. Syntactically, it's still taking me a little bit to get used to. There's no auto IntelliSense around labels that we could have these kind of pre-laid out in the correct formatting. So why this one does not require an equals, but this one does, a little bit of a mystery to me. Hopefully that'll be something that gets either consistent or maybe gets some IntelliSense around it. Maybe at some point. All right, so now let's see. I'm still a little fuzzy as to why I'm needing to publish without debugging to get it to push to my environment, but that's fine. So back out here in our environment where we had the error, we're going to go ahead and close this and discard our changes. So there's still no company in here. I don't believe we'll need to reload for the changes, but we'll see. This is technically test 3, so might as well go with it. Yeah, it's complaining that test 3 already exists in Cronus USA. That strikes me as surprising. It's giving us the correct error message, which means our updated logic's in there, so what am I missing? How curious. Let's go take a look at Cronus, because we shouldn't have any. Now I admit I've hit the okay. Now I'm not doing things correctly. I left myself a couple of intentional errors in the code, and now I've managed to paint myself into having some unintended ones. And that's what I thought. You know, we don't have any Z's. So what could we be doing? Now, we change company to the company name. So we do know that we are swapping to the Cronus company because we get the correct error message. And we're hitting that error. So what could possibly be afoot? This is the only place where we're copying things against code, so we'll go ahead and do a debug run and see what we're tripping on. Let's jump over to I agree there are some ideas out there on the Microsoft Ideas site to make switching between companies a little easier. For probably about 90%. For probably about 90% of the customers that use this product, they only have 2 or 3 at most companies, sometimes even less, sometimes just the one. However, I've worked with enough companies and customers over time where they had 20 plus and jump between them all the time. So I hope they streamline that a little bit. And we've got our charming company statistics background error bombing out. That's going to be fun to debug. Always having that in there. Okay, we know, having gone over to Kronos, we know there are no z-test customers. So what are we doing here? Well, that is fascinating. Does change company not work anymore? Because it is telling me that the customer already exists, but it is not possible. Huh. Well, that's fascinating. I will be feeling pretty proud of myself if I manage to come across change company not working anymore when all I was going to do was an entire code unit around changing company. Okay. Well, that's exciting. Well, all right. I'm going to debug that offline because that is baffling. And for the most part, what we're going to do for the rest of the code unit is going to be things very much like this. It's going to be extremely repetitive code I'm not going to do on camera and waste your time watching me type out all of these events. But effectively what we're going to do is for each of the customers, as we went over, we're going to watch for insert, modify, delete events, and we're going to replicate that across the company barriers, presuming I can get change company to work. The only other thing that is of note is when we do inserts and modifies and deletes on the item unit of measure, there is always at least one item unit of measure for the base unit of measure, so we'll want to do that. I don't think in our demonstration of things, I don't think we're going to go ahead and try to do any unit of measure conversion work in this particular build, because that gets a little crazy. So let's skip that entirely for now. Let's go to our bots. Some data, sure. Now, for our bot strategy, which I admit I wasn't planning to get through much of today, we are going to have to handle the fact that players are going to be able to buy multiples of different types of bots. So not only do we need to have some basic bot configuration information, but players are going to be able to upgrade each individual bot. So this means that we need to have a baseline template for each bot, much like we have all of the customers and vendors copy between companies. We'll have a baseline template bot in the main company. But we will also need to allow the player to purchase multiples of things. So we're going to need to have a bot setup or a bot template, and we are going to also need to have a list of all of the active or at least purchased bots that the player has. Depending on the different types of bots that the player has, depends on what type of code we're going to run for those later for each in-game day. So my thinking on this is that one thing I haven't spent a lot of time working with is enums, extendable enums. So let's do it. We're going to, very common in other languages, pretty new to Business Central, BCS bot type enum. We'll set this to extensible, so if someone in their own environment wants to make new types, they can. Power to them. So this is going to be a straightforward list of key value pairs, effectively, of integer to values. And I think, yep, that's what I was thinking, is that there are captions. So if we look at our list of, I keep switching to the wrong window, we are going to have sales, purchasing, basic logistics, advanced logistics, assembly, manufacturing, research, and marketing. So we'll go ahead and use this as our list of bots that we're going to make in our enums, which we'll go ahead, we'll just paste this in here so that way we don't have to switch between windows very often. There are browser solutions for Visual Studio Code where I could just go ahead and have that Google Doc open in a window. I also know a number of people will make the requirements document like that. They will go ahead and create a document folder right inside Visual Studio Code and copy the requirements document into it, which checks the requirements into the repo, which can be beneficial because then if the requirements change over time, you know when did someone update that, but it is an additional thing to maintain, so there's some mixed value there. Generally speaking, a lot of enums, it's a good idea to have a blank default value. So that way, when you're creating cards for these different entries, it has a blank value initially, and then you need to select one. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to go ahead and make that caption on that blank. This way we can do a nice easy catch later on. Slice. Sure. Alrighty. Let's see. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Just gonna go through this as quick as can, so we're not wasting too much of anyone's time watching me type, because not fun for anybody. We'll go ahead, and this is a purchasing. This is inventory basic. Hopefully the keyboard shortcuts on this screen are not too distracting. It's very easy when we're working as developers to naturally assume people are aware of keyboard shortcuts, so it felt like a really good idea for me to make sure that I'm not just assuming you're seeing that things are happening on screen, and this way I don't have to every time say, I hit Control-Shift-P here, and hopefully that's of use to people. And there we go. So now we've got a basic enum. We don't need the list to live here in perpetuity because it's now in here. And when we save that, there we go. We now have a bot type enum.al. Cool. Okay, so now, unlike the customer, vendor, items, and all those sort of things, this is a brand new table. So we can save ourselves a little effort. As you can tell, it really doesn't matter what you name it, it's going to get renamed. We can go ahead and make our brand new table for the bot template something that is already inherently out of the box a multi-company table. So that way we don't have to replicate that between the two different environments. So, bot template. Okay. You'll notice that it's auto, I'm hitting control space after object types, and it is pulling numbers. And you'll notice that even though I did object 88,000 here and 88,000 here, and I did 88,000 here. For one, it's getting that from the app JSON. We have to, for now, I suspect Microsoft's moving in a direction of changing this, but we'll see. We still are functionally working a lot like the classic environment where there are specific ranges of objects that we can live in. This mostly affects on-prem licensing, but cloud very much so in that ISV and app source solutions use lots of specific ranges. But the short of it, for if you're new to development, anything that lives in the 50,000 to 99,000 object range, though that is generally considered customer custom specific. And we are living solidly in that. But every object has a key that is both type and number. So even though table extension is 88,000, because this table is a different type, it's a table, we can also use 88,000. For the most part, a lot of the object IDs are slowly fading out of use as far as our ability to need them and rely on them. They're certainly not gone yet, but for the most part we're doing things by name, whereas that wasn't always the case. So it's not a big deal, as you can see here. So far everything I've made is an 88,000 number. That's fine. Next time around, when I create a new table, same denial, sure. It will know per table that I'm working with 80,001 this time. So it is type specific. We'll not save that, and I don't need that right now. It's fine. Okay. So bot template, we're going to go ahead and this is system metadata for, if you didn't know, this is a GDPR classification thing. Let's go ahead and make sure this gets a caption, PCS. We'll just make it nice and easy. This will be the same as that. Okay, and now if we hit control space here while we're up in this section, these are all the properties that we could have on a table. And there's lots of different pieces that we might need to set and change. For example, later down the road, if we change the template structure and we're going to use a new table for that, we can obsolete this table out. We can choose if it's okay to paste things in. And there are some different properties. There's more properties than we're going to possibly want to go over right now, but our key one here that we won't use very often in most customer environments, but we sure will today, data per company. By default, this is yes. We're saying no to that. So now, if we create a page against this table and we open up that page in Cronus, we'll see some data. If we open the master table, master company, we'll see that same information there. So pretty useful. Okay, let's see. For our bot templates, I'm inclined to go ahead and give these a primary key called bot template code, and we'll go ahead and make that a code 20 because it's a really common primary key type. throughout the system to do a code 20. And we have to also make sure we update down here that the primary key is bot template code. So there we go. And for GDPR, this is also just system metadata. There's no, if you're curious, we could say that it is customer data. We can say it's end user personally identifiable information, organization information. These will show up in a classification worksheet, but system metadata, because there's nothing special personal about it. So there we go. Always a good idea to fill them in if you can. And like a lot of things, it's a good idea to fill those in while you're here, because coming back and doing 50 of these later, not so fun. Let's go ahead and we will say bot type. And what's cool here is now we can use for our bot type enum BCS bot type. There we go. And I'm going to be lazy and copy this. Excellent. I'm being told in chat that there is an extension for filling these in nice and easy, the data classification, if I recall. I believe it. One of my favoriteest things about moving to the Visual Studio Code environment, if there's something that it does do or doesn't do, odds are pretty good with enough time and possibly swearing, you can make an extension to make it do that. And our community is doing a great job of continuously streamlining that. Odds are pretty good because Waldo has given me the extension pack and given the community the extension pack. Odds are probably pretty good that I have the data classification fill-in extension. I haven't actually looked. I still need to spend some time learning my way around this because I have a lot. I also do Angular development and Node.js things, so I have quite a bit of okie dokie. AZAL outline. Oh, I think that just got an update recently too, if I remember correctly. That'll be this extension with lots of help. Cool. Excellent. I need to learn my way around this because there are lots of things to streamline this. And some of the new wizard options around this are pretty neat. I'm looking forward to getting to know them. I think it'll save a lot of time for a lot of people and make things pretty easy to go through. So this looks pretty cool. I know it's been updated a few times, even just recently. If you're in the community, he runs every other week a Biggening, he calls it, just a webinar type thing where we hang out on Friday evenings European time. Towards the end of the workday on Friday, that people share knowledge and talk about what's going on in the industry. So very worth checking out. Okie doke. Anyways, back to this. We have the bot type, and this is going to pull from our enum that we created just a few minutes ago. And then let's, just because I think it's a nice little thing that a lot of fields have for templates, a description. I'm inclined to keep that. Let's see. In aesthetic thing, I mean, the here we're dealing with the table is already called bot template. The field is being called bot template code is redundant, and it's not generally recommended to do that because later it would be bot template dot bot template code. It's going to be clunky. So I'll go ahead and clean that up now. Wasn't paying attention to that as I was walking through. But I will leave bot type as that since it more refers to a enum of the same name. So let's go ahead and keep it like that. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so there's not going to be a lot about this just yet, but I want to add more to this later. And I've renamed a field again, which the primary key will not be happy about. But thankfully I haven't published this yet, so it won't cause us any problem in the data side. And let's go ahead and create a basic page. And you know what? I am going to try out our AZAL outline little helper here to create a new file of a page. And it is going to BCS bot template list. Let's give this a whirl, because why not, right? Let's see, this is definitely administrative. Oh, you're kidding me. Is that seriously? We're going to have this? Okay. I'm not sure I have this entirely set up correctly because I'm still not getting my fields. It just didn't take the click. Oh, I'm buying rounds for the next beer and R. That is fantastic. Instead of having to type out all of these dang fields. But I am. So, well, that's cool. We had this in the classic development environment, the ability to speed generate objects using some wizards. It was really handy for creating the basic framework. I missed it a whole bunch, and apparently I wasn't the only one. Wow. Okay. I won't say game changer, because I think that's kind of overused, but I will say that that is fantastic. Okay. As mentioned, there's a lot I'm going to be learning as we're going through this, and whoo, that one's a good one. So let's demonstrate the data per company, because why not? We're here. Let's go ahead and do a quick publish. I don't need to debug this. And away it goes. And we could go ahead and clear this console so we can see what's going on a little cleaner each time. We can jump on out of this. We don't need to solve that change company issue right this moment. But we do, however, need to refresh this little environment. And here's our BCS bot template list. Now, this is coming up with the prefix, which normally we would not want it to do. And the reason for that is because here in the caption, it is using the caption, the name of the page. So, for example, we would probably tidy that up to say just bot template list. One of the other things that we could do is we could do additional search terms. We could add onto that, and we could include bots. And now this will come up also with the bots keyword search. So if we were to do that now, it would find very little. But if we go ahead and update the extension, then that would now find this correctly. So here we are in our bot template list. We haven't created any sort of page. This is just an editable list, and there's very little to it at this point. So Robo Seller 1, because why not? Just something. There we go. Okay, so we've got this bot in our template list here. Now if we do company, I keep going to company information like that's going to help me change companies. If we go to our bot template list, we can see, even though we've changed companies, that is persisted across that company wall. So that's going to be really helpful as we develop our different bot templates. And that's going to be where we're going to pick up next time, because I've been chattering away for about an hour and a half, and that feels like a good cut point. Our next stop where we're going to pick up tomorrow is we're going to be creating cards to edit some of the details of the bot templates. Hopefully I'll have that code unit cleaned up and tidied up so that way we can potentially start setting up some of our master data offline as well. And we'll definitely go over what gets set up so that way you can kind of understand what the chart of accounts looks like, what our posting groups are going to look like. The chart of accounts is going to be massively simplified since we're just doing a pretend game. We don't have auditors coming to check that out. And we're going to have each of these different bot types have some shared attributes as well as some per type attributes. So that's going to be a little fun and interesting. The setup cards are going to look different based on different bot types involved. And then we'll get through that, and we'll see how far we get tomorrow on that. And hopefully we'll get pretty far. Okay, well, fantastic. And for those of you who were here for the live broadcast for the past hour and a half, thank you. And for those of you who are watching it later, hopefully it's a useful time zone for you to join live. If not, not a problem. It'll be up on YouTube to enjoy later. Alrighty. Well, yeah. So thanks for watching, everyone. Talk to you later.